Welcome back. Once again, it's episode 9 of the Digital Discipleship Podcast. Listen, it is just getting better and better and better. If you haven't had a chance to go back and to listen to the myriad of videos and the previous episodes that we put together, I want to encourage you to do so. Man, in some of these episodes, I am pouring out just everything I have for you because I want to see you blessed and I want to see you lead well in the context that God has called you to. And so we've been in this series all month. We've been talking about help. We've really been focusing on finding the help and helping leaders take the steps they need to take to really get over the hump. And today we're going to continue that in a way because I'm going to be talking about the 6 types of working genius. And this comes from a work by Patrick Lencioni. If you don't know him, he's a leadership guru who wrote The Advantage, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, amongst many other things. And he just produces some really, really high value content. And this is a resource that I actually discovered a while ago. And I introduced it to our team recently, and they just went crazy over it, man. Our staff, we ended up talking about this for about 2 hours before we realized, what we had been doing. And so I want to share it with you because I want to help you discover your area of greatness. Sometimes as leaders, we don't see the full value of who we are because we're focusing on the things that we get wrong and not the things that we get right. And so today, that's what I want to lead you through. I want to lead you through this journey of discovering the things that you do really well, discovering your strengths, discovering your type of genius, because the whole premise of this work is that we're all genius somewhere. That if we define and discover the area where we're a genius, then everything really starts to come together. So we're going to get ready to jump into this. But before we do, I've got to introduce myself. So my name is Henry, and I'm the systems architect. I work with pastors, churches, networks, and denominations to help them build the systems they need to grow. And that growth is defined spiritually, numerically, and financially, amongst other things. And so that's what I'm here to do. So in any way, if you see where I can come alongside you and your church and help you take some next steps, don't hesitate. The link is in the description below. We can connect and we can plug in together. All right. So let's start here because I really want to jump into this one. I'm going to give you what I have to give you in this little tight nugget, and I'm going to let you go and run with it. So before we talk about the 6 types of genius, like the preacher that I am, I got to set up the message, right? I got to set it up. So we got to deal with what's holding you back. Side note, for all of my aspiring preachers and teachers out there, when you're coming and you're getting ready to deliver a message and you're giving people the word, you're giving them this truth that Jesus has taught or that God has given us in his word, one of the things that's always helpful is to explain the problem that the text is going to answer, right? Is to help people see the problem in their own lives before you just throw them the answers. Don't give away your answers too cheap. You got to take them on a ride by putting the issue in front of them in their lap, letting them feel the emotion of their challenges, of their struggles, whatever it is. And then you bring in the word of God with Jesus as a hero and you kind of knock it home. That was a whole separate thing, but let me keep going, right? So let me do the foundational work first, all right? So let's talk about this. What's holding you back? If you're a genius in some area of your life, then what are the things that are keeping you from operating in that genius? What are the things that's keeping you from seeing your real value? What are the things that's keeping you from really noticing just how special you really are in the kingdom and in what God has called you to do? And so I know there's a ton of things that could be holding you back. It could be your mindset. It could be your location. It could be the people you're around. It could be who you're listening to. It can be all these different things. But today, what I really want to do is I just want to touch on 3 of the things that I know of that are probably holding you back. All right. 3 things that I know of that hold, and these are common things that hold most of us back as we kind of work through becoming ultimately who we're called to be. The first thing that might be holding you back is that you keep making the wrong comparison. Is that you're comparing yourself to people who are not compatible with you. especially if you're a leader, if you're a pastor. You're looking at your church and you're comparing yourself to another church. I remember when I planted on a college campus. I was dealing with mostly college students. And I found another pastor who was planting right around the same time. And I thought, you know what, we could have mirroring, kind of journeys. And for the first couple of years, man, we grew at almost the same rate. I'd call him and be like, man, we had 200 people this weekend. He'd call and be like, man, we had 200 people this weekend. It was great, right? But there was a stark difference. He was in a large city in Ohio, and I was in the middle of nowhere in Louisiana. He was leading middle to upper middle class Caucasian congregation. I'm leading college students with no money and jobs on a HBCU campus, meaning that they were 100% black, right? And 95% of them on financial aid, right? And so we had what looked similar, but two different trajectories, because he had a budget that was growing in a way that helped him keep going, and I didn't, right? And so for a while there, I was getting discouraged because I'm looking at my people like, why y'all not giving? And they looking at me like, cause we ain't got it, right? Excuse my English there, but we don't have it. And so what I discovered is that I was making the wrong comparison. And here's what you got to understand. There is no church in America that's exactly like yours. It just doesn't exist. Your church, your setting is unique. It is special. It is different. And you have got to embrace it for what it is. And so a part of what you have to do is you have to stop comparing yourself to people who are not in your city, who are not in your denomination, who are not in your context, who don't have your gifting, who don't have your people, who don't have your facility, and who don't have your call from God. You've got to stop the wrong comparisons. So you know how I stopped that back at that time? I completely stopped following all pastors and churches on social media. I did. I'm just being honest. It became discouraging because, I leave a tough day on Sunday where we struggled to get, 100 people in the room. We were first starting out, whatever it is. And man, I go sit on the couch and I go on social media and every pastor is just excited about how many people came to Christ. I remember one Sunday I went home and I'm like, man, it was thin in there. It was tough. The atmosphere was dry. Nobody really engaged in the worship. And worship was struggling. We had sound issues and my sermon wasn't great. And I go home and sit on the couch and somebody talking about, man, 100 people came to Jesus today. And I'm like, I'm happy 100 people came to Jesus. But I'm sitting here and because I had that comparison in my head, I felt like a failure. So you might need to do that too. You might need to take a hiatus from social media so that you can stop comparing yourself to the wrong thing. You see that picture right there? Somebody's trying to compare an apple and an orange. Those are two completely different fruits. Those fruits grow in two completely different places. And you just from two completely different trees. And one of the things that you've got to embrace is that you are one of one and you live for an audience of one. And so you got to embrace that and stop the wrong comparisons. Number two, another thing that might be holding you back is the wrong culture. The wrong culture. Sometimes you can absolutely be a genius, but because you're operating in a culture that doesn't celebrate your particular kind of genius, then it's going to make you feel out of place. It would be like an elephant who lives amongst a tribe of lions, right? If you're going to judge me based on my ability to track prey and to roar, then as an elephant, I'm going to always be a failure. And yet I can wade and walk through this pond that you always struggle to get through. I can walk through it like it's nothing. The fruit on the top of this tree, I can reach it like it's nothing. This journey of thousands of miles that we need to make over the course of the season, I can make it like it's nothing. But if I'm in the wrong culture will tear down what the right culture will build up. I often say it this way, is that when you're in the wrong culture, what they called brokenness and what they call failure, another culture will call beauty. And so what you've got to figure out is, am I in the right space where who I am and what I bring to the table can be celebrated? And ultimately, in the perfect world, every setting we go into, would celebrate who we're called to be, right? It's if we're genuinely living out a calling from the Lord, then that setting, that culture will celebrate that, right? That's the perfect world. Well, we don't live in the perfect world. And because we don't live in the perfect world, some cultures are just not conducive to who we are. And that's a reality. It's a hard reality. I wish I didn't have to have that conversation concerning the church. But I'm telling you, it's the truth. Is that there are some cultures that just will not celebrate who you are. I'll give you an example. If you go into a culture that is a controlling culture, when you start talking about empowering people, you won't be celebrated, right? You just won't, right? If because you've got a small group who wants to control everything, then when you talk about releasing other people, it just won't work. The same is true vice versa. It's one of those things that you have to find the culture that fits who you are. And that's assuming that you're walking in godly maturity in your gift. Because the same can be true. If you are a person who wants to push forward the wrong kind of culture, if you want to be controlling and you don't want to empower people, if you want to make all the decisions by yourself and you don't want to involve other people into it, when you go into a healthy culture, that healthy culture will shun you because that culture has maybe learned the value of what it means to do that. And so you've got to make sure that you're not in the wrong culture, because sometimes the wrong culture will hold you back. And there are a ton of reasons for that. Sometimes a wrong culture is a wrong culture because of what it's been through, right? Every system we create, whether they're healthy systems or unhealthy systems, every system has a name on it. Every system we create is created because of something that we've gone through with some person that has taught us this is how we ought to behave going forward. So a church that has a system where everything is very controlled by either the senior leader or the people around them, it's because they maybe had a situation where they gave control to somebody and they abused it. And they just never worked through it, right? And so you've got to be monitoring the culture. And here's the third thing, is the wrong coaching. One of the things that might be holding you back is who you're listening to as you strive to become who God has called you to become. And, this is a really sensitive topic, so I'm not going to go too deep into it. But in the culture we live in, where we're in this era of spiritual fathers and spiritual mothers and who's your pastor and who you're under and all these kind of things, I think there really needs to be some training on how the Lord helps us identify who those people are to us. I really do. Because sometimes we go after people because of the name or the notoriety or the platform that they have, but we don't do a good job of inspecting their fruit. So for example, you're trying to, somebody is maybe trying to force their way into a relationship with a pastor who has a huge following, and he's got a ton of people who love him, and he has a conference that's popular and all these kind of things. And you run in saying, you know what, I want to make this my spiritual father. And you never investigate whether or not they've raised up and released any sons ever in history. Like, you don't stop to think about the fact that all the sons that they have are adopted. They're people that they grabbed while they were on their way up. And so where it ends up hurting you is that you come in expecting that you're going to be coached and you're going to be mentored and developed by this person who's going to pour into you, only to discover that you're not their target audience. That they don't do well working with people who are at the place where you are in the process. They don't do well working with people who are leading churches of 100. They more so wait till you get around 500 to 1,000, grab you as you're ascending, and then give you what you need to go over the top. Right. And that's one scenario. Another scenario is that you're leaning in to somebody who's coaching or mentoring or whatever it is without discovering what are the things that they use to get where they are. What systems do they have in place? And I know you might get tired of hearing that word from me, but I promise you I'm going to keep on using it. Because systems are how we take the processes in our heads and make them reproducible for other people to use them. Right. And I've got a million different definitions for system. That's just one of them. Right. It's how we take what's in our heads and make it reproducible for other people. And sometimes we're taking coaching from people who were just so gifted that they were able to break through. And you can't copy giftedness. Either you're called or you're not. And so what you need is you got to make sure you have the right coaching. And I'm not talking about just your pastor. I'm not talking about that. Because you can have one person be your pastor and get coaching from somewhere else, right? You can have that. Like for example, when I chose our pastor, he's since passed away. When we first connected with him, it was for our marriage. We need to lead it for our marriage. I was a smart dude. I had Google. I could find ministry ideas and strategies and stuff like that everywhere. I needed marriage and I needed personal wisdom. I didn't need somebody who can blow up our church. I needed somebody who can make me a better man. Right. And so I'm not saying that your spiritual leader or your pastor or whatever it is the only coach you have. What I'm saying is you've got to identify the coaches you really need. Right. Because you may be asking a leader for something that they don't have the capacity to give. Right. And so you've got to make sure that you're doing your good research. Right. So now that being said, now we're going to step into looking at, now that you know these things are holding you back. So here's what I'm saying. I need you to address these three things. Make sure you're not comparing yourself to the wrong people. Make sure you're in a culture that's conducive to who God has called you to be. And make sure that you're getting the help and the coaching you need for what you need. Right. If you need systems in the church, going to a leader who is a great shepherd may not help you because they're going to be great at shepherding, but they may not be great at building systems, and vice versa. If you need to be a better pastor and figure out how to take better care of your people, going to somebody who is popular and has a big platform may not lend itself to giving you the tools that you need to help you take care of people well. All right. That's all I'm saying. So now let's talk about this. If you can get over these things, now we can start talking about discovering your area of genius, right? Because there are 6 of these areas. We're going to talk about all of them briefly. But really what I'm trying to help you uncover is, seeing the area in which you may really be something special if you could just really give you a chance to be it. So let's talk about these. Area number 1 is the genius of wonder. The genius of wonder. And again, this comes from Patrick Lencioni, his study, The 6 Types of Working Genius. All right. So the first one is the genius of wonder. And so we talk about the genius of wonder. People with this particular type of genius, they're always thinking about how they can make things better. Right? They're always wondering. This is in the area of what he calls ideation, where they're in the realm of ideas, and they're really strong at seeing the potential of what something could be. And that's a form of genius, right? Looking at a situation and going like, man, how can we make this better? Like somebody called a cab one day, and when they called for a cab, they said, all right, we'll be there at the time you said. And then the cab didn't come at the time they said. So they picked up the phone an hour after the cab was supposed to be there and called. And the dispatcher said, well, he said he on the way here around the corner. And it was still another 2 hours before the yellow cab showed up. Somebody saw that scenario and said, you know what? It would be great if I knew exactly where the person who was coming to pick me up was. If I could literally look at my phone and see how far away they were. It would be even better if there were more cabs or rides around me. You know what? Why don't we create this and let's call it Uber? That's the gift of wonder. It's looking at something that's existing, that may even be working, and saying, but still, how do we make it better? Right? How do we make it better? Like people with this gift, with this genius, they're frustrated when things and people don't meet their full potential. And I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, this is where I live. Like this is my strongest of the 6. I live in the place of wonder. And for a long time, I thought it was wrong that I lived in this place. I really did. And because, I thought, I had to be something different and I had to be more of this and more of that. And I've learned that this is my gift to the world, is that I'm always thinking about how we can push people forward. The fact that I'm doing this podcast and leading this company is because I'm looking out at the discipleship landscape of the church and I'm going, this could be so much stronger. Like if every church realized that God has given us the opportunity to create the kinds of people that will be sent into the world to make a difference, like we'll approach this differently. And so I'm always wondering, what does it look like if every church had a 100% success rate when it came to discipleship? If we had a process and we knew how to put together a plan for every person, if people stopped going to the world looking for purpose and came to the church instead, what would that look like? See, that's the gift of wonder. It's this curiosity that's always seeking out the full potential of the organization or of the people that we're called to lead. All right. That's number one. Number two is the genius of invention. And this type of person is really about creativity. And people who have this gift, they're always looking to generate new ideas and new solutions to problems, right? They're always thinking about how can we creatively pull something together? How can we create something new, right? Even these people, they're even really comfortable creating something out of nothing. Like to say, hey, look, this idea doesn't even exist yet, but we need somebody to create it. So let's jump in and let's do it. That's what this gift is. These people are gifted with that ability. And so they're always searching for the next thing to create to help move the organization or the people forward. It's a genius of invention. All right. Number three is discernment. See, the first two, we were talking about the world of ideas. And now we're stepping into activation. Like right now we're stepping into really activating and getting people plugged in. And so this type of genius is really about this a natural ability to evaluate and assess things. Discernment, this is almost like in the spiritual world, the prophetic gift, the prophetic lens, right? It's that ability to give this intentional kind of judgment. And that's super important, because really the key thing here, it says judgment, but it's really instinctive judgment, is that they just have a sense of things. They can't always explain it well. They can always put it into words. They can't tell you why, but they can feel it. And as a result, they're always handing out guidance to where somebody or where an organization could go next. It's a gut feeling, an instinct, an intuition, whatever you want to call it. But they make these decisions that pull together the logic of what I know, the common sense of what I hold on to, but also my awareness of people being people. And they pull all those things together to make discernment. And so these are people who are instinctively judging things. And every organization needs these people. You need people who are willing to ask the hard questions. If everybody on your team says yes every time you present an idea, you're being set up to fail. You need somebody who's not afraid to put every idea and every person under scrutiny. Right? Now, keep in mind that I believe that a team works best when all these things come together, but this is just one of the parts that you need to have. All right. Which takes us to the next one, which is galvanizing. And this genius is all about bringing energy and motivation. Right. And so really what they're good at doing, they're really great at pulling the people together, motivating the people, and making sure that everything has this bit of synergy, if you would. Right? They want to come along and make sure that they're pushing people and encouraging people to take the next steps and to go forward, which is why their focus is movement. They're thinking about, how do we get this thing going forward? How do we get this moving? And if you have this gift, you're really great at rallying people. I like to think of this one almost like the pastoral or shepherding gift, right? It's that ability to really pull people along and gather people and bring some energy and motivation to people as they walk along this journey, right? And that's a form of genius. Like, man, this was blowing my mind, because I'm sitting here and going like, okay, dreaming up ideas is a form of genius, because everybody can't do that. Like, and I realize that. Like, some people can't come up with vision to save their life. And I always thought it was common and it was easy. It was the simplest thing in the world. If you show me the pieces I'm working with, and if God gives me a sense of where we're headed, I can figure out how we move from here to there. But for some people, that's the hardest thing in the world to do, because it's a form of genius. We just never realized it. Same thing as invention. Creating new things out of nothing. Some people never have that idea. And so it's like, all right, that's a form of genius. Discernment, being able to just feel things out. That's a form of genius. Galvanizing is a form of genius. Number 5, look at this. Enablement. These are people who are quick to respond to the needs of others. All right, they're always looking to come alongside and help other people do what they're called to do. Their focus is support. They're always thinking about, how can I support other people? How can I come alongside other people and help them take the steps they need to take? Help them become who they're called to become. Help them do what they're called to do. How can I come alongside other people and provide assistance? You know, people with this gift, oftentimes you don't have to ask them to help you. They see you carrying stuff and they just come get stuff out of your hands. Enablement. Like, it's that ability to come alongside people and help them shine as heroes with your help, right? It's not about the credit. It's not about being recognized. These people get a joy out of seeing people accomplish what they set out to accomplish, right? That's enablement. Last form of genius, tenacity. Tenacity. And these people, really, their sole job is making sure that the projects get finished. They're really good at that. Their bottom line is impact and results, right? Is making sure that people push forward. And so these people are what I would call high standard people. Is that they are all about setting a standard and making sure that everybody rises to that standard. And making sure that everybody comes up to that standard, and making sure that people understand that the big picture of what we're building is more important than the small picture of our comfort. Is that they're about pushing people to take the next step. And so they keep us focused on results. They make sure that we don't get stuck in our feelings, that we don't get stuck in our ideas, but that we just walk forward, right? So really quickly, one of the things that my team and I had a laugh about is we were laughing at how some of these different types of genius frustrate each other, right? So for example, somebody who has the gift of wonder might be frustrated, or let me say it this way. Somebody who has the gift of tenacity, who wants to finish things, might be frustrated by somebody who has the gift of wonder, right? Because the gift of wonder, you develop a strategy, you develop an idea, you pass it off, and before they finish the first idea, you're already to the second, third, fourth, fifth idea, right? And what we talked about with our team was this, is that every gift doesn't necessarily move at the same pace, and that's okay. So if I have the gift of wonder and somebody else has the gift of galvanizing, when I develop this idea, when I develop this vision, this strategy, I pass it off to the person who's a galvanizer. I pass it off to the person who has a gift of tenacity. And once I give it to them, they're now responsible for running with it the rest of the way. If I have the gift of wonder, I may not go the whole distance with that idea, but at the same time, that may not also be my job. And I've seen that work both ways. As somebody with the gift of wonder, I have passed things off and stepped out of them. I've also tried to run with the thing all the way to the end and seen it through. I've done it both ways. But if depending on how the team is composed and comprised, then we have to understand that we can all be at different stages of different projects at any given time, right? Because while you're finishing up on tenacity, while you're enabling people, while you're galvanizing the group, I'm over here preparing what's coming next. Because if we're going to be great leaders, we cannot wait until we need a strategy to develop it. Oh my goodness. Listen, can I tell you some of the greatest opportunities that leaders miss is because they start getting ready for it when it shows up. And that doesn't work. That does not work. Like, you've got to make sure that you're preparing for it before it gets here, right? You've got to be preparing for what's next before it comes. So for example, right now, part of the vision that I'm wrestling with for our church is to be this almost like this different kind of multi-site model where the churches are, and again, I'm still fleshing this out, but where the churches are autonomous, but the leaders are synonymous. All right. So let me tell you what I mean by that. And so I'm fleshing out this vision where out of our church, we will send other leaders to go and plant churches. And when they plant those churches will carry different names. Those churches will be led by the leaders that we send out. Those churches will have, some unique identity stuff and culture stuff based on where they're going to fit. Their flow and their energy, their styles may be a little bit different. And so in that way, they're going to be autonomous. But the way that they're going to be synonymous is that the senior leaders will still be on staff at the main church. And so every week we'll still sit at the table with those senior leaders, with those staff people, and all those kind of things, because it's still the same DNA, right? It's still the same family. We just shifted from a family to an army to a nation kind of thing. And so since we're making that shift, we're still connecting and synonymous, right? And so one of the things that we've got to push forward and we've got to understand is that if that's where I think we're going, I can't be super distracted and super into the details of leading all the small groups in our current church, leading all the prayer ministries in our current church, leading all the discipleship process in our current church. Because as the leader, I have the responsibility to be for my gift set to be in wonder right now about what that looks like. Right? Because I've got to make sure that what we're building as far as processes and systems today matches where I think we're going. And so because of that, my point is this, is that we can be at different places in different processes. We can plan small groups and wonder, and then I pass them to somebody who has galvanizing, tenacity, discernment, whatever it is, and then I move on to the next thing, and that's okay. And there's a lot of conflict that happens because people think their leaders are scatterbrained because they hand them something and move on to the other thing. And it's not that they're scatterbrained, is that they are operating in their area of gifting. And what they're doing is that they're moving in their natural pace. And so we've all got to discover our natural pace and we figure out how those things work together. But that's what we have to do. All right. So those are the 6 types of working genius. And I hope that you'll really walk through this. And I'm attaching another resource for you down here at the bottom so you can grab it and go through it and mess around with it. But I hope that you really gain something from this. I want you to know that you're a genius too, that there is genius in you and you've got to embrace your type of genius. Don't spend your time lusting or coveting somebody else's genius, but lean into your type of genius. And I believe as we mature, we start to see pieces of all of these in our lives somewhere, depending on what we're being asked to do. So listen, I hope that this was a blessing to you. And I want you to keep growing and becoming who God has called you to be. If there's a way that I can help you and your church, all you've got to do is click the link below, click the link in the show notes, and set up your free discovery call with me. And I'll look forward to chatting with you and walking with you as God continues to do what he does in your life. Until next time, keep the gears turning.